As a second part to the JWT cookies series, I'm going to do the front end and I'm going to go with the basic built-in fetch for the browsers rather than Axios, and just to show the simplicity of it and also without having to add an extra framework. To do the same thing in Axios is not much more work. In fact, it's even easier, but I want to show how to do it without having to use a third-party library in case you choose to go with something other than Axios. So to start off with, we're going to make a new project, which is going to be the front end. So I'm going to go make directory accounts front end, cd into that, and I'm going to create an index, a HTML file. So that'll be our login. And we'll be able to console log the response we get back. And I'm also going to create a JavaScript so that we can do all the code. So we'll open that up now in VS Code. You can see here we've got the index.html and we've got the index.js. So we're going to start off with the index.html because that's the easy part. So I'm just going to use some HTML here, the size. So to start off with, I'm going to import the JavaScript, and the way we can do that is we can simply put in a script at the top here, have the, and this is important, have defer here, and this means tells the browser to wait, and here we can say we want to have the index.js. Now if you're going for older browser support, obviously put your JavaScript at the bottom inside the body, so you would move this down to the bottom here. But if you're not worried about that and you want to use the modern tools, then you can use defer, and that means it'll do the equivalent. Now I'll add a login, so I'm going to put in a h1 login, and we'll add a form. So the form here, without an action, we're going to remove that. Give it an ID of login form. And here we're going to have a few different things. So the first one will be a label. That'll be for the email. There are different ways you can do labels. However, I like to have my labels on top and then put the input here. And we'll just remove that email there. We'll do the same for the password. So this is where our label is going to go. If you add the type of password, it'll just hide when somebody types in the password, so a bit of extra security there. And finally, we'll have a another input, which will be a submit. Give it a value of login. So now we've got a button for the login. We've got two fields, one for password, one for email. So this is your standard login form. And we've given the form an ID so we can find it in the JavaScript. So let's have a look at that so far on the page. And to do that, we're actually going to use a tool called Live Reload. So to get that, you just need to get the extension, Live Server, install that. And what this will do is imitate a server, so you don't have to set up a server just to try this out. Great, now we've got that there. As long as we're open in the project, we should see the index JavaScript here in the HTML. And we can just hit down the bottom here on VS Code, go live. We'll open up our browser, and we've got a login page here, pre-filled with some information from our autofill. Here you can put in an email and a password, and when you log in, at the moment it's refreshing the page. It's because it's submitting. We're going to stop that, but you can see at the top here we've got the email and the password being sent through. So we've got this password here from the last series episode. So now what we want to do is go to the JavaScript side of things. So as long as you've got this here, we'll now be able to open up here the JavaScript, and we can start bringing in some things. So we're going to go const, add in the form, which is going to be login form, query selector, and this will be the ID that we brought in before. So now we've got the login form. I'm going to create a function that is going to be login. And I'm going to keep this as simple as I can. I have to add in this function login to when somebody submits the form. So to do that, we're going to say login form, add event listener. The event we're listening to is going to be the submit. So that's the submit action. So whenever somebody submits that form, and when somebody does submit that, we're going to give it this function here, which is going to take an event, which is actually going to be this login. So let's replace this function here with login. That's the function it's going to use. And this login function is now going to receive an event. And so here we can access all the details from the form. So I probably want to say prevent default first, so it doesn't refresh the page and send the information. We also want to get the data from there. So I'm going to say const email equals get the email and the value from that. There are other ways to do this, but this is the most well-known way, I guess. And once we've done receiving that information, we also want to take the form and reset that form so it clears out those fields. So we're just going to check that out and see if that works. If we come in here, there's our login. Login, you can see it clears it there, and it hasn't refreshed the page. So just to make sure you can see that, I'm going to clear what's up here. Login, and there you go, and you don't see that pop up here. So that's working as it should. Now that we've got that happening, we can also check out how we can send the information to our backend, and when we receive that information, we need to receive the JWT back. To do that, I'm going to go to the backend and open this up. Going back from the last video, now we want to add, instead of the localhost 3000, we want to add this address here. So live reload uses a particular address, and that's the one. So we're going to copy and paste what I've got here to here. So if your local host or your IP is different, you'll need to change it in the origin of your Express app. Now, of course, this would be an environment variable in production, but for now, we're just going to hard code it in. Also going to scroll down to the max age of the cookie. So we're going to change that from just being 1,000 to a year. Now, normally you wouldn't do this in production because you don't want a JWT to survive for a year. But depending on what you're doing, you may want to do that. So this is just an easy way to do that. And that should be everything that we need to do. So now we can go back to our front end. So I can close this. Now we can do a HTTP post to that server. So we're going to go use fetch. I'm going to take a URL, and it's going to take some options. So let's set those up. So I'm going to say the URL is our backend. So there's going to be HTTP localhost 3000. Now we're going to auth and login. And then our options, we're going to say what kind of HTTP method is this. So we're going to say it's a post method because we're posting information. We're going to say the data, which is going to be the body, is going to be json.stringify. And we're going to pass in the email and password. And that's going to be as an object, so I'll just put that there. So that's now going to send a post with the data. Another thing we'll want to add is the headers. And it's going to be an object because you have several headers, and we want to send the content type as application JSON. That should be everything we need. Now we're going to start the server up. So just hide this, bring in our server here, and run that through npm start. So that's now listening on port 3000. If we go to our website here, just inspect and check our network, we can log in. You can see here we get a 204 or a 200. So if we look at those, we get an OK true, which is what we expected. The only thing is now we just don't have a cookie. If you have a look here, we don't actually have a stored cookie. And the whole purpose of doing this was we want to log in and receive a cookie, hold on to that cookie, and then every time we send or request information, we send that cookie automatically to the server, and the server then verifies that cookie. So in order to do that, we need to do something over on the front end. So everything else is set up on the back end. So if we have a look here, we need to do credentials include. Now when we log in, we should see that we get the access token cookie, and it'll last for the lifespan of that cookie. So you can have it last for a day, an hour, a year, it's really up to you. And of course I can delete that cookie, but that's not what we're going to do. We now want to send a GET request and see if we can get the information back using this cookie. Now this cookie is not accessible by the JavaScript. So if I go into the JavaScript and say document.cookie, it's a secure cookie. We do not see the cookie here. And this is why I choose not to do the Json Web Token. In the local storage, it's now not able to be accessed by JavaScript, so you're not going to get that sort of attack. However, our server can still use the JWT to verify the user back and forth. So the first few things I want to do is I want to go fetch some users, and I also want to log those users. And while that's happening, I also want to remove the login form. Let's start with the removing the login form. So we'll have a function here. And I'm simply going to go to the form, which we've got login form up here, so I'll use that. You probably won't do this in production the same way, but I'm just keeping this as simple as possible just to show how it all works. Set the style display to none, and I'll just hide it for us. We're also going to fetch some users, so let's try that. So fetch users. And here we're going to fetch. We need a URL and some options. Now, since this is going to be a GET, the URL is about all we need. So it's be host 1000 API users. And our options are going to be, you can put your options straight in here, but I like to keep it as a separate option object. Credentials. As include here as well. And once we've received them, we're just simply going to return them. And whenever we receive information, we have to take the response as part of the fetch and take the information from JSON. What it's going to do is going to fetch some users at this route. Once we've received them, we're going to parse them so that we can view them and console log them. So now we can do that. So let's try that out. So we're basically going to then and then once we've fetched the users, we're going to take the console log and log them so that we can see them. And then finally, we're going to remove the login. You can choose the order that you want to do things. So once that's done, usually it's good practice that when you actually write a promise that you have a catch as well. So you can do something like this. Obviously you want to handle it in production a lot better, and I'll add one to the bottom one as well just to keep it consistent. So that's pretty much all we need for that. So we come back here and log in. If we do delete this cookie, let's refresh. If we try to log in without setting these credentials here, we take that out, comment it out, you can see the difference that it makes. Let's try and log in now. You can see here we don't get a cookie. Obviously the action still works for that, but we don't get the information. Instead of getting information, we get back the server error. So we're saying JWT must be provided. So we don't get access to the user's information, which is the sensitive stuff. So now that we're holding onto that cookie, we can see we get the information back, no problems. So that about wraps it up. In general, what you want to be aware of, this can be done a lot easier in production with Axios. This whole setup with the URL and the options and the credentials, that can be done once instead of in several places through its Axios setup. So when I mean Axios, I mean this library here. And you can scroll down to a certain section in the setup as to creating the instance. So here you can actually set up the base URL, and that way you don't have to fill out the whole entire URL, just the path that you want. But if you look down the bottom here, you can see that there is a with credentials. And this indicates whether or not the cross-site access request should be made using credentials. So that's the equivalent thing to what we've done before. Except here with this one, it's credentials instead of with credentials, and we've got the keyword with include. There are other options, of course, which you can read about in the Mozilla specifications. You could use the same process for this when you're using a framework such as React or Angular. There really isn't too much of a difference. I thought I'd show it in just the JavaScript vanilla sort of way to doing it without any extras, and that way you can follow on from there later on.